Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us for this important announcement regarding Kelowna International Airport. I'm speaking to you today from the traditional ancestral unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. My name is Colin Basran, and I'm the Mayor of the City of Kelowna, and I'm pleased to be your host for today's announcement. It's my great pleasure to welcome the Honourable Omar Alghabra and the Honourable Harjit Sajjan. I'd like to begin today's proceedings by inviting the Minister of Transport, the Honourable Omar Alghabra, to the virtual podium. Mr. Minister, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Basran. Hello, everyone. Bonjour à tous. I'm happy to join you today and my friend Minister Sajjan today with some exciting news for the Kelowna International Airport and the broader Thompson-Okanagan region. I'd like to first begin by noting that I am speaking to you today from the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. As British Columbia's second gateway airport, the Kelowna International Airport welcomed more than 2 million passengers in 2018 and 2019. But as you know, the global COVID-19 pandemic has had a devastating effect on Canada's air sector. And as Canada's world-leading network of airports has been hit hard, including Kelowna's, I would like to take a moment to thank airport workers for their hard work during the pandemic and the recent climate events that hit the region. A special mention to the CEO, Sam Samadar, for his leadership. Despite challenges, Canadian airports have continued to provide the essential air services that have been so important throughout the pandemic. Airport employees have worked so tirelessly during the pandemic. They've continued to ensure that critical cargo such as food, vaccines, and personal protective equipment has kept moving across Canada safely and securely. Merci à vous tous. As Canada works toward the safe and gradual restart of the aviation sector, and believe me, no one wants to see this happen faster than I, investments in our airport infrastructure are crucial to maintaining safety, security, and connectivity. That's why I'm pleased to announce an investment of more than $15 million for crucial infrastructure projects here at the Kelowna International Airport. This funding will help the airport expand its combined operations building, replace sections of the terminal building roof, upgrade airfield lighting, and construct runway and safety areas. It will also help the airport establish facilities and modify airport infrastructure to help improve flow and management of air travelers and airport employees related to COVID-19 testing and screening. This work will help ensure continued safe airport operations for passengers, air crews, and airport employees. I'm also pleased to announce that our government provided just over $3 million to the airport to help the Kelowna International Airport cover operational costs and ensure the airport continues to serve travelers and surrounding communities. And as we look to the future and the safe reopening of air travel, investments in our airports will ensure a vibrant and competitive Canadian aviation sector. The funding I've announced today will allow the Kelowna International Airport to continue providing Canadians with safe, reliable, and efficient travel options. It will also help ensure the financial health of Canada's airports and help Canada work towards economic recovery and safe travel restart as the pandemic eases. And in conclusion, I want to take a moment to thank all of my colleagues, especially my British Columbian caucus colleagues, and Minister Sajjan, who's here with us, for his leadership and his advocacy on behalf of the region. Without his advocacy and his leadership, I wouldn't be standing here with you today. Thank you, Minister Sajjan, and Mayor Basran, thank you to you, and back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Alghabra, for sharing this fantastic news with us. And with that, I'd like to turn the floor over now to the Minister of International Development and Minister responsible for the Pacific Economic Development Agency of Canada and Member of Parliament for Vancouver South and friend of Kelowna, the Honourable Harjit Sajjan.
Great. Thank you so much, Your Worship, for the introduction. But before I begin, I want to acknowledge that I'm here speaking to you from the traditional unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And as Minister Alghabra noted, Canada's airports have been hit hard by the global COVID-19 pandemic. And I also want to take the opportunity to thank Minister Alghabra for always being there to listen to our concerns and reacting very quickly when it comes to responding. So thank you again for always putting BC a priority, and especially the Okanagan. And airports in British Columbia need additional supports. And that is why our government is announcing investments of more than $18 million in Kelowna International Airport to maintain safety, security, connectivity for travelers, workers, and communities. Now, these funds are provided through the Airport Critical Infrastructure Program and the Airport Relief Fund. But we know that we have more to do. And that is where the Pacific Economic Development Agency comes in, that's specifically for British Columbia. We know that the Pacifican must be there to support the economic growth that is needed across British Columbia. And we're looking at ways on how we can build stronger and more resilient British Columbia across all the regions. And the pandemic has highlighted the vital role Canada's airports play in our country's economy and in sustaining the social economic well-being of our communities, and especially right there in the Okanagan. And as we look to a brighter future, Canada's airports, like Your Worship, the ones that you have in Kelowna, there will be an essential part of the economic recovery. So I look forward to working with you. I look forward to come visit when the opportunity comes, and look forward to the greater growth that will occur in your community. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Sajjan, and really appreciate both of you. So I'd like to take a moment just quickly to remind any media who are on the line that we are doing a Q&A session afterwards, and this would be the time to queue for questions. So we'd ask that if you have any questions, to please dial in to do so. And just before we get to questions, though, just a couple of things from myself. First of all, just want to talk about the fact that YLW is a hugely important pillar in the Okanagan's overall economic strength. And this investment today will play a huge role in helping the Okanagan pull out of the economic challenges presented by this pandemic. This airport, along with its partners in aerospace, air service, and other commercial services, continues to grow and exceed demand year in and year out, and almost in defiance of the economic circumstances. And that is a huge credit to Sam Samador and his team at YLW, and to the great ongoing leadership and relationship the City of Kelowna has with other levels of government. Before we move on to the rest of the program, again, I want to thank Ministers Alghabra and Sajjan for recognizing this wise investment in a facility that will produce exponential benefits throughout this region for decades to come. And now I'm pleased to welcome Laurel Lennox, Press Secretary to the Minister of Transport, to the virtual podium, who will open up the floor to media questions. Laurel, over to you.
Thank you. So we're going to get started with the Q&A portion of this event. So it's one question and one follow-up per reporter. Alors, nous allons maintenant commencer avec la période de questions. C'est une question et un suivi. Just a reminder to media, you can exit the full screen on your video so that you can see the dial-in information. Operator, do we have a first question?
Yes, we do. Our first question comes from Travis Danraj from CBC News. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Thank you. My question is for Minister Alghabra. Thank you for taking our questions this afternoon. I understand that you put out a statement along with other ministers and the Canadian Trucking Alliance earlier this week, in relation to this convoy that is coming to Ottawa. There are, what seems like tens of thousands of people on the way to Ottawa this Saturday. And there are a lot of security concerns right now about some of the rhetoric. People saying that, they want this to look like January 6th. There have been threats of violence, threats towards the Prime Minister. I'm wondering if you can comment on this and what steps the government is taking to address the convoy that will be on Parliament Hill this weekend.
Thank you, Travis. Let me first say thank you to our truckers who have been there for Canadians throughout the pandemic and continue to deliver, as we speak, products that Canadians need on the shelves of retail stores. Almost 90% of truck drivers are vaccinated, and they're at work as we speak. Protests is an essential element of democracy. People have the right to protest. It needs to be peaceful. It needs to be respectful. And I understand that the matters of security is left to our security agents, that operational decisions are up to them. But I am hopeful and confident that protesters will respect our laws. After all, they're advocating for the rule of law and law and order. So I expect that protesters will respect the rule of law. They'll be respectful, and I leave the issues of security operations to our specialists.
Certainly there are a lot of people with legitimate concerns that will be coming to Ottawa, but there is rhetoric that is seeping into this conversation. And I want to give you the opportunity to respond to a tweet by Ontario MPP Randy Hillier, who said that you're a terrorist seeking out to condemn Canadians to starvation in the name of being safe. What is your response to that kind of language being out there, specifically about you personally?
Travis, let me first say that unfortunately, I'm not unfamiliar with personal attacks. Most of these attacks are, related perhaps to my background. So, and what I try to do, I try to avoid commenting on those. But I just want to say that there are millions of Canadians of Muslim background, Jewish background, other visible minorities, who deal with aggression, some of them subtle, some of them quite overt every day. And this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. We expect every Canadian, regardless of their background, to be treated with respect, to treated with goodwill and good faith, and that we avoid promoting fear and hate online or in person. Second, what's equally alarming is the promotion by some elected officials that there's a risk of food shortage, trying to spread fear and panic among Canadians. This is irresponsible of anyone, not the least of an elected official who has a platform. Do we have room for debate on how we can manage our supply chains and policies and public health restrictions? Sure. Can we disagree respectfully? Sure. But to spread panic and fear among Canadians and exaggerate and embellish and create false narrative for political gains is irresponsible. And I call on all politicians to come together in this issue. We can still debate what is it that we can do and what is it that we need to do and what can we do better, but avoid fear-mongering and scaring Canadians from something that is not even in the realm of this reality. Thank you.
Next question.
Your next question comes from David Aiken from Global News. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Thank you very much for hosting this call. Mayor Basran, I too, like Minister Sajjan, look forward to getting out of Ottawa and getting to Kelowna's hospitality in the orchards and vineyards of the Okanagan when this all breaks. My question, though, is, as for my friend Travis's, was for Minister Alghabra. And just sort of to pick up a little bit on that, you did issue a joint statement this week about the issue of the cause of perhaps any supply chain hiccups. And so I just wondered if maybe we could just get you to go over that again. There are some of those conservative politicians, conservative premiers who say that the vaccine mandate for truckers is the cause, is the precipitate cause of anybody who might find a problem with a particular item on their grocery store shelves. What have your officials said to you about that?
David, thank you for your question. And perhaps I can join you when you visit the Okanagan too. But look, it's supply chains issues have been disrupted because of COVID. Canadians recall at the beginning, even at the height of COVID, when we had so many other shortages, whether it was toilet paper, whether it's flour. I also know many people who have ordered a couch that has been delayed or a dishwasher that they've been waiting for. Undoubtedly, supply chains issues have been supply chains have been disrupted because of the pandemic. Much of those disruptions have been caused globally, and again, you can look at media covering other countries and other jurisdictions where they are dealing with similar issues, and some of it is domestic. Don't forget, COVID brought with it public health measures and restrictions, absenteeism because of sickness. We already had a labor shortage prior to the pandemic, and then it got exacerbated because of the pandemic. Also, our consumption habits have changed. So people who used to spend money on services, vacations, and other type of services that they used to do prior to the pandemic now are using, because they couldn't spend their money on those services, they changed their consumption habits and buying more products. So you have also additional demand that didn't exist before. And top it off, climate change events that we're witnessing, particularly, today we're speaking virtually from Kelowna. They were at the epicenter of major supply chains disruptions because of flooding, and summer they had fires. So there are many issues that have caused these disruptions, and labor shortage for truck drivers is one of them, but absenteeism. So the idea to reduce the supply chains issues to a vaccine mandate is inaccurate and is false. Having said that, we recognize the delicate job that truck drivers do. We've exempted them from the beginning of the pandemic from many of the public health measures. And even though we required vaccination for other sectors within the transportation sector, air, marine, rail, we also delayed it. But we've signaled to the trucking industry that what's going to come. And in collaboration with the Trucking Alliance and other stakeholders, we know that now we reached a critical mass where almost 90% of truck drivers are fully vaccinated. So this was the right time to encourage the remainder of our truck drivers, the remaining number of our truck drivers, to get vaccinated. Also, it was coordinated, and it happened at the same time with the mandate that the US is imposing on its own border as well, that will impact Canadian truck drivers. So all that to say is that, yes, we have serious supply chains issue. And by the way, on Monday, I am hosting a supply chain summit with several of my colleagues and many stakeholders. And the conversation will continue. And I met with my opposition critics. I invited them to submit ideas on how they thought the government can facilitate further resilience and redundancy in the supply chain. That conversation needs to happen. It is critical. But again, it's misguided at best. It is irresponsible at worst to be promoting fear and panic among Canadians that our food supply is at risk. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's a lot there that we need. There is one more point, though, that I want to just bring up. And I'm going to quote back to you a comment that Eric LaFlèche, who is the CEO of the Metro grocery store chain that runs Jean Coutu, Metro stores, lots of grocery stores, did $5 billion worth of business in the last quarter. And he held an analyst call yesterday. And on that analyst call, I had the chance to listen to it. He said this. He agreed with you that he says, we're still getting our produce, we're getting the merchandise. But he said this, and I'll quote, "The vaccination of truckers is having or will have mostly an inflationary impact on the cost of merchandise coming in from the U.S. Produce especially, we see an uptick in transportation costs right away." So that's the CEO of a major grocery store chain, and that's straight on you. That's straight on the vaccine mandate, that there may still be merchandise, but Canadians will be paying more for that merchandise because of the vaccine mandate.
David, I met with Mr. Lafleche and other grocery store networks and outlets, and they've all had different take on what's happening in the supply chains. But what's undeniable is that we are all seeing increasing costs, and those increasing costs are attributed to many factors, one of which is the shortage of truck drivers. And by the way, this is the one thing that we're also going to work with the Trucking Alliance and other stakeholders on ensuring that we create mechanisms and work together on recruiting more and more truckers, creating a safe, working, well-paid jobs and environment for our truck drivers. So all that to say is that there are many factors, and we're all seeing it today, and we have to address it as a government, as a society, as an industry. And our government has been there for Canadians, and we will continue to have the backs of Canadians. So I don't want to dismiss the issue of supply chain challenges, but let's be clear. The pandemic is not going to manage itself. The best way to get out of the pandemic is through vaccination. And the faster we vaccinate everybody in Canada, the faster we get out of the pandemic. And by the way, the faster we ease the supply chain challenges, the lower we have hospitalization rate for truck drivers and other sectors in our economy. So it is the most proven method to help us get out of the pandemic as quickly as possible. And that's why we feel it is critical to encourage everybody, particularly those who work in essential industries, to be vaccinated as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. If you'd like to ask a question, please press star followed by the number 1 on your telephone keypad. And your next question comes from Jamie Tawil from Global. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Thank you, Mr. Alghabra. This question is for you. You mentioned in the announcement regarding funding for YLW, terminal expansion, and improved infrastructure, but you also mentioned passenger connectivity improvements, and I was curious if you could elaborate on what that means specifically.
Thank you, Jamie. I was just trying to unmute myself. So the $15 million covers the following. Expand the combined operations building. Replace sections of the terminal building's roof. Upgrade airfield lighting infrastructure. Build runway and safety areas. And build, lastly, which is I think the point you're referring to, build facilities and modify airport infrastructure to improve flow and management of air travelers and airport employees related to COVID-19 testing and screening. So basically, we're providing financial support to the airport as we learn lessons more from COVID-19 and how we can optimize the flow of passengers, especially when we require testing and verification of credentials. This will help them build infrastructure, could be kiosks, could be touchless screens, could be barriers, but it's meant to facilitate an optimization of the flow of passengers, particularly and getting tested as well. If for now, I guess for the foreseeable future, we'll still need to have facilities for testing. So this funds is meant to help them build that infrastructure.
All right, thank you. And just a quick follow-up for Mayor Basran. Mr. Mayor, obviously tourism has been hard hit during this pandemic, as you know. This is a significant investment that will certainly improve volume, the flow of volume, passenger volume at YLW. Can you speak to perhaps what this might mean for local businesses in the tourism industry specifically who've been especially hard hit during the pandemic?
Yeah, certainly this investment will help them, absolutely, but it'll also help the supporting air services, businesses like Kelowna Flightcraft, and other businesses as well. So it'll have numerous spin-offs, not just tourism, but KF Aero, apologies, not Kelowna Flightcraft. That was their previous name. But anyways, it'll have a number of different spin-offs. And it'll also help in regards to the fact that I'm really proud of the fact that YLW has seen our passenger traffic numbers increase percentage-wise probably quicker than any other airport in the country. So I think it speaks to the desire of people to be here, but I know that some people are still hesitant to travel. But with the enhanced measures for security and all of the great work that's happening federally to make sure that air travel continues to be safe, I think that, yeah, this will help speed up the recovery. And we're certainly looking forward to utilizing these funds to enhance the security and connectivity of the Okanagan region. And we think that this will help with the recovery, absolutely, and will be welcome news to our not only our tourism operators, but all of our local businesses.
Thank you. Next question.
We have no further questions. Back to you, Laurel Lennox.
Thank you. So this concludes the Q&A portion of the event. So I'll turn it back to Mayor Basran for closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Laurel. And again, I just want to thank the ministers for your belief in Kelowna and YLW and the Okanagan, and for your investment today. Thank you so much, and really look forward to continuing to work with both of you and your other colleagues to advance economic recovery in the region. And so I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. And so this concludes today's announcement, and have a fantastic day. Thanks, everybody.